Welcome to the Sharon Fitzmaurice podcast, where we celebrate the resilience of the human spirit. Again, I want to thank you all for subscribing, following, sharing, and supporting this podcast and the inspirational guests of their beautiful stories, their insights, and wisdom. I'm also excited to say that it's a very special milestone that we are now 3 years celebrating our online Soulful Journey members community. If you would like to join us, please check out sharonfitzmaurice.mindfulness.com. And now, on to our next guest. Karen Kruger is a qualified menopause lifestyle and executive coach. She has always been interested in developing people and empowering them to reach their potential. With 20 years' experience in the corporate world in leadership development, she has coached managers and senior leaders to maximize their potential and to optimize performance and engagement within their teams. But since her breast cancer diagnosis, Karen has used her skills to help cancer survivors to make positive changes to their lifestyle to help manage menopause and life after cancer. She's worked with hundreds of women to identify their biggest challenges and support them to find ways to live a more fulfilled life. She specializes in working with women after cancer diagnosis. She runs workshops and individual coaching focusing on menopause, nutrition, mindset, and behavioral practices. Women come away being able to sleep better and overall reduction in side effects from their menopause. And she is also the host of the podcast Survivor's Guide to Menopause and Cancer, Ireland's first dedicated podcast for women that have had a cancer diagnosis and are in the menopause. Karen, you are very welcome.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to meet you and be on the show.
Oh, so happy to have you. And I said to you, that this podcast is about celebrating the resilience of the human spirit and that life does throw many challenges in front of us all, whether it be personal or people that we love and care about. But as a result of those challenges, we learn a huge amount about ourselves, our resilience, how we can overcome or move through those challenges, and that we might change or redirect our own personal professional path, which you've done, Karen, through your own diagnosis. And it's an amazing testament to you because you could have just sat back and said, I'm the victim. This all happened to me, and I'll just have to get on with my life the best I could. But instead, you've turned it around and you
Yeah.
are now helping to support other people. So congratulations.
Oh, well, it's only when somebody sort of articulates it like that, I have a minute to reflect and consider. Thank you for saying that, Sharon. It certainly has been an eventful couple of years for me, and I've always been the type of person that I don't know, fairly determined, just want to get on with it, and have always wanted to try and make the best out of situations. And yeah, so that was a lot of the reason why I wanted to do something with my qualifications and help other women. Um, so that's sort of that. Do you want me to explain a little bit?
Well, we'll go back to, I suppose,
Yeah.
because you're still a very young woman, and it was in December 2021 that you were diagnosed with breast cancer. Give me the lead up to that. What were the signs? Was there any symptoms? What was going on for you that made you go further?
Yeah. Well, Sharon, I am a mother of three children. So I have a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, and 4-year-old who just started junior infants. And we we live in Wicklow in Ireland, and we had moved house. We just bought a house um in 2019, and then in 2020 I had Axel, the baby of the family, the late lamb. And that was December 2020. So by the end of 2021, October-ish, around then, I had to go back to work. And thankfully, there was a lot of working from home. But with a young baby, there was a lot of stress and anxiety about where he was going to be looked after. And, the childcare system in Ireland is an absolute disaster. So there was I just remember it being a very stressful time as a mum. And I think a lot of parents can relate to that. It's a very stressful time when you've just had a baby and trying to sort them out in childcare. And the other two having to be looked after and so on. So and the stress of returning back to work. So there was a lot going on. And I didn't have any symptoms other than being exhausted, but it was, an exhaustion that all parents experience, new parents experience. And with three children, this being my third baby and going back to work, it was like I never even considered anything that it was just a normal tiredness, from waking up in the middle of the night with a young one and just being hectic. So that was never a symptom that I even acknowledged. And I still don't even know if it was related to the cancer or not. But anyway, in December, we were getting ready for Axel's first birthday. And I, we were going out for lunch or something like that. And I jumped into the shower to shower. And I was tying my hair up in a ponytail to stop it from getting wet to get into the shower. And, when you're a mom, you don't get a time to, examine. A lot of the time, you just don't get time to examine yourself and check, and you don't have a minute to yourself. Your kids are banging the bathroom door down and so on. You just don't get. So I never really spent time checking my breasts to see if everything was okay. But at that moment of time, I tied up my hair and I could see that one breast was misshapen each time I did that. And then I felt it and I felt a lump. I remember thinking to myself, God, I actually don't know what that is. That's crazy, And I showered and so on. And I remember saying to my husband that night, I said, found a lump. Jesus, could you imagine if it was breast cancer? Like, and he was there, don't no. It's fine, don't think about it. And I said, okay, well, I'll, make an appointment with the doctor. And then of course COVID with the vaccinations and so on like that. It was the end of December. That was the middle of December, and it was the end of December when I got an appointment after Christmas before New Year's. And the doctor, the GP, was like, "Oh, right, yeah, that's quite big. It's quite unusual. That's quite big, right? Okay, well, we'll get you in to get it scanned." And yeah, I remember thinking to myself, "Okay, don't panic, don't panic, don't panic, don't panic." This type of rhetoric in my or going on in my head, and I went for the triple assessment in St. Vincent's. And I remember I was ages waiting for my appointment. I went private and it was the 20th of February or something like that was the next appointment. And I remember thinking she told me that it would be urgent and that I would be seen within 2 weeks. And I was like, I can't wait that long. So I contacted the public in Vincent's and I said, could you get me in faster than that? And they did. They got me in. I can't remember what date in January, but they got me in mid-January, something like that. So I went in and I had my scan, I had the mammogram, and then I had to go and have a ultrasound. And then the doctor came in and she was like, right, well, we've just seen something and we're going to give you a biopsy here. And, they were like overly friendly, just kind of like really
Mm.
chirpy and making jokes and stuff like that. And I just thought to myself, this is really weird. Now they were really nice and everything. And the nurse, you could see that the nurse was really anxious. Or the woman, I think she might have been the radio that had done the ultrasound, and then this like specialist doctor came in to do the biopsy, and she did the biopsy, and it was very sore. And then she's like, I'm going to insert like a metal chip, and then off you go. You're going to have to go back for a mammogram, another mammogram, so that they can record where the chip is or whatever the metal thing is. Oh, I was just didn't know what was going on. And I remember sitting in the waiting room and there was another woman sitting in the waiting room. There's a couple of people, but there was a woman in the waiting room for the mammogram and she had the overalls on. She was crying. And I thought to myself, oh God, am I, should I also be crying? Like, is this what's happening to me? And I went up to her and I just gave her a hug and I sat down again. Then I didn't say anything to her. Um, And I went back for the mammogram. It was so painful because the tumor was in my breast and it was really even sore than more painful than normal. And then I had to wait to see the doctor. And I remember waiting and waiting and I was must have been there about 3 hours. And at that point I was at my wit's end and I started to cry and I just said, I can't wait any longer. I have to leave. And they wouldn't let me leave. And I said, please. And I was crying. I was like, "Oh, please, I can't wait. Please don't make me wait any longer. I just want to go home. I just want to go home." I remember the guy come back. I was out on the staircase and he was saying, no, you have to come back in. You have to come back in. And I was like, right, okay. So I went back in. And of course, COVID, I was on my own and everything, and I went back in and he said, I went in to see the doctor and the doctor sat me down. They said, look, we have seen something. We're not sure what it is. We're going to go and get it tested. And I went home on a long drive, like an hour drive home. And I remember ringing my brother, my older brother, who I don't know, or he just rang me at the time. I can't remember. Anyway, I just rang him and he was like, "Hey, how you doing?" All happy, happy,
Mm.
not knowing that and then I just burst out crying. And the poor man, he was just like, "What's happened, Karen?" And I explained to him. And I just kept saying, how stupid could I be? How stupid could I be that I didn't check myself, that I didn't see these things? And oh, I mean, he was blindsided. He just tried his best to sort of calm me down. I was in the car driving. It was just, yeah.
Mm.
So I told, um, yeah, so I didn't actually tell my parents at that point. I didn't want to worry them. Um, I waited until I got the results. So I went back in 2 weeks later and they were like, obviously bring somebody with you. So my husband came in at the time and he came in with me and we sat there and they're like, you have a breast cancer and the tumor is small though. It looks like stage 1. So all will be fine. You probably won't need chemo or radio or anything. We'll just remove it and then leave it at that. Um, So I remember I left and I was just so happy, so, so, so happy. And at that point, I had the results. My parents were just recovering from COVID. And I popped into their house and I explained to them. And I was like giddy with excitement. I was so happy. Anyway, they had to go and do an MRI for me 2 weeks later and just to check the location of it. Did it 2 weeks later. And then I had to wait 10 days for results. I mean, Sharon, it was just ridiculous how long these series of events and then it was the 5th of February or whatever. Yeah, it was no, so the 5th of February was when I got my diagnosis of
Mm.
stage 1. And then it was like, what, 2 and a bit weeks later, they said, actually, no, we made a mistake. Sorry, you're stage 3. Because when we did the MRI, it's kind of like a weird shape. And when it came up on the mammogram, it looked as though it was only 1 centimeters, but it's actually 5. And you need to have a full mastectomy and you will need chemo and you will need radio. And the doctor, he had his mask on because of COVID. And I just thought to myself, I don't like this man. I hate him. And it must be,
Mm.
look, it must be a really hard job for him as well. Like he didn't really have a whole lot of um, softness to him. And you know what? Like in reflection, he's not paid in a way to have a soft, sort of customer service demeanor, relationship demeanor. He's there to to save my life and cut out and do a proper job. So, but I remember thinking, I really don't like this man, and off I went. And look, it's just the most devastating news. I remember just being so confused and so frightened and sitting in that room. The nurse was there as well. I just like felt like the room was closing in on top of me, and I was straight away, What's the plan? What are you going to do? How are you going to fix this?" Um, I need to get it out. I need to get it out now, so a lot of panic. Um, and I just remember then leaving and heading back to the car and just saying to my husband, "Oh my God, what does this mean?" And just crying. Yeah, it was Yeah, it was really hard. It was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking because I'm an athlete, not athletic. I'm an energetic person. I love to exercise. Um, and like you see a lot of these signs that say, not signs, information leaflets and things like that. Breastfeeding, reduces your chance of breast cancer and stuff. And I just remember thinking to myself, I'll never get breast cancer. Like I'll just never. I breastfeed my babies, all is good, so on, and which is so deceiving. Like, and I just
Mm,
never really was. I just never thought it would happen to me, you know. Sure, nobody thinks it'll happen to them unless maybe they have the BRCA gene and they're sort of like, well, it
mm.
could happen, but your average, just so it was a real shocker. And I was 42 at the time, or 41, and then I turned 42 just a couple of days after I started chemo.
Wow.
Oh, that was the diagnosis.
And it's
That's
a
long.
lot.
Yeah.
It's a
The,
lot.
Yeah, there was 4 months then until I had my mastectomy, because then they had to check to see if it was in my lymph nodes, and then they did that in February. And I remember it was the night Russia invaded Ukraine. I'll never, like, that was the date that I had my biopsy. And then, whatever, 10 days later, they said, no, actually, it's stage 3. It's gone into your lymph nodes. You have to have a full auxiliary clearance, is what they refer to it. All the lymph nodes have to be removed. Stage 3, HER2 negative, estrogen positive cancer, 5 centimeters, grade 1 tumor. So it was a slow growing tumor, which I was very lucky that it was a slow growing tumor. Um, don't know how long it was in there for. Yeah.
But
So
even Karen, thank you for sharing all of that.
it
You
was a
know,
lot.
yeah, it is a lot. And even when you're telling it, you can see how it still affects you, reliving those moments because each one is traumatic. But, being a young mom, you're saying not having the time, you don't have time to sleep and eat and shower, don't mind go around and examining yourself. And your body has gone through many changes while you're pregnant anyway. And as I said, it takes a whole year for your body to kind of come back to itself after a baby. So you might have noticed something, and it definitely when, breasts are different sizes, again, if you're breastfeeding or anything like that, these things just are kind of normal. So how would you have known that there was anything wrong? So again, I
I
just,
know, and
you
and,
know.
and and I was breastfeeding, and I remember really struggling with feeding my baby on the left side where my tumor was. I remember he never got enough feed from there, and he didn't like feeding from that.
Wow.
But like, I mean, I'm not sitting there going, maybe I have a tumor in my breast,
No.
you know. And interestingly, like I went to lactation consultant and everything, and nobody like checked, or
Yeah.
there was, I don't know, there was no contemplation on it. There was no thought that that actually could be a problem. Um, I eventually stopped feeding him on my left side. I only fed him on my other side, on my right side. But I remember being very stressed after he was born. I remember being unbelievably stressed. Like, I think I definitely suffered with postnatal depression, but it was never like diagnosed, whatever. I never spoke to anybody about it, but I just remember being so sad. And the fact that I couldn't breastfeed properly got me really depressed, and
Mm,
just the pressure. Third baby, you should be able to do it, sort of terrible self-talk.
mm.
So I think, a lot of stress that year, and adapting and so on. But who knows? Who knows how it happened?
Absolutely. And sometimes there is no, reasoning behind it. As you said, some people could have it genetically dispositioned in their family or something. But like that, I have spoken to many people that have been healthy, living well, and something occurs at a stage, and then they're like, how did that happen? Where did that come from? And there may never be an answer to it. But I'm
Yeah.
glad that you're here and you're able to share your story now.
Yeah.
So after your mastectomy, you went on then to receive chemo and radiation.
So I had my mastectomy and then all the lymph nodes removed, the full auxiliary clearance. And so there's a period of about 6 weeks recovering from the operation. So I couldn't really lift my baby when I came home from hospital. I remember him, he was just over a year. And it was a nice time. He bonded with his dad so well, whilst
Mm.
I was in hospital, which was the silver lining, which was really nice. But I struggled. I couldn't lift him properly because of the mastectomy and everything. So there was, that was really sad time. But
Mm.
yeah, we got through it and I was able to lift on the right side and so on. But then I had started then the chemo on the 23rd of May because I remember it was day two when I had my birthday, the 25th. So I started, I remember pestering them and pestering them and pestering them, and they had to do like a CT scan to see if it was in the rest of my body. Because I was, I said to them, how do you know there's not in my body, the rest of my body? And they said, well, actually, you're right. Let's do a CT scan. So they did a full body CT scan. And I'll never forget waiting for those results. It was, every hour is like a day. I couldn't sleep at night. I was crying, standing next to my children in the middle of the night, looking at them, thinking, what is my future? Oh, it is. The waiting is by far the most painful thing. You're totally alone. There's nobody or no can anybody help you. It's just the most like I'm very lucky I never struggled with my mental health
Mm.
up to the point of my diagnosis. Very, very high up on the ladder, very sort of driven and positive. And like I said at the start, always looking for learning from experiences and love helping people, so just
Mm.
very much sort of proactive rather than like the victim
Mm.
approach. But my God, give somebody a cancer diagnosis and that just knocks you off that ladder all the way down. And I really struggled then with my mental health, and I never went to a charity or anything like that. I really don't know why I didn't at the time. Um, I really don't know why. I think I actually just was, I guess I was completely frozen. I didn't know what to do. Um, and waiting then for the CT results. And I remember the nurse calling me, and I was standing in my bedroom looking out the window. And I remember I was shaking, my whole body was shaking when she rang me because I could see that the number, and I said, and she said, it was Friday evening, it was about 6 o'clock or something like that. And she said, look, I wanted to wait until I got, these are these nurses, this is how amazing they are. So I
Mm.
waited past because I really, no, she wasn't making a thing. She said, I wanted to get the results for you because I know how much you were anxious about it. And she said, everything came back clear. I just burst out crying and I just said, thank you so much. And she was so good to have called me,
Mm.
to make sure that I could enjoy my weekend.
Yeah.
Um, and then it was back to hounding them to get me in for my mastectomy. And they were like, "Okay, Karen, we're trying, or not the mastectomy, the chemo. We're
Yes.
trying to get you sorted." So then 2 weeks later, I got my chemo started, and cheekers, that's like being hit by a bus. I don't know how to describe what chemo is like. COVID, nobody about, left at the door, up you go, in you go. I had to have a port put in and or a cannula with type of thing in your arm.
Mm.
Up you go and sit there, wait, and 150 million questions. The pharmacist comes out. These people, it just so much information. And then I was there for a couple of hours, and I did the cold cap. I was all smiling, and I was like, "Oh, this is like great! I'm starting my chemo. Life. Come on, like get going." So this is kind of like, the way I am is like, just get going. Like it hadn't hit me like you're actually doing chemo, Karen. When I was like, let's go, let's go, let's go. Had my chemo, and then by the end of it, like I think it was like 4 hours, something like that. By the end, it was like, okay, this is not funny anymore. I'm still
Yeah.
sitting here, like, what is going on? I'm still sitting there with this freezing cold thing on my head. It was incredibly uncomfortable. Some people tolerate it and are so good. For me, it was awful. I hated it. But I remember saying to myself, just do it for your kids. Like it'd be good for you to have your hair. And I remember the oncologist saying, look, Karen, it's like 40% chance or something like that you'll keep your hair. But sure, just try it anyway if you want to. So she's just promoting me, and I was just like, oh, awful, awful, have the cold cap because you have to wait after. Now I know that Illuminate, there's other companies doing great things with cold caps and shortening the period for you to have it on your head, but I was there for ages. Um, and then, stuff like when you get your chemo, she said things like the nurse said things like, just be careful when you go to the toilet. Make sure that you flush the toilet properly and make sure all the chemo, all your urine goes down the toilet and nothing is left. Because, it's toxic and you don't want that to go and get into your kids and everything. I was thinking to myself, oh my God, what? Like terrifying stuff.
Mm.
I was like, where do I wee? Like, what is, I was
The bucket
terrified.
down the garden.
I know, I really was. And I remember just looking into the toilet going, Jesus, is that the cancer going out of me? What is that? Like, oh, hectic. Things that you just don't think about when you have chemo and having to drink lots of water to try and flush it out of my system
Mm.
and then having to take the tablets. And I remember the next day being totally out of it and not taking the tablets at the right time when I should have. And then that like exacerbated my symptoms, my nauseousness and things like that because I didn't take them at the right time.
Mm.
But it was because I didn't write anything down. I'm sure they gave me a leaflet, but I was just totally out of it. And like when you're going through it on your own with COVID, so like I had somebody there to listen to say, Karen, now at 12 o'clock you have to take your
Yeah.
tablet. So day two was an absolute disaster zone. My mum came over to give me cake for my birthday, and the kids were like singing happy birthday. And I was, just get out of bed, you'd be fine, Karen. Come on, you get out of bed. Like she had no idea
Mm.
what I was going through, neither did I. And I remember just like dragging myself out of bed and going down to the kitchen and then singing happy birthday and putting a cake to me. I mean, I think chemo is like being really drunk and feeling very sick and like wanting and like the worst headache and just everything all at once. You're totally out of it. You're
Mm.
not yourself at all. You can't think straight. Well, at least for me, can't think straight, couldn't see properly. I was just like, who am I?
Yeah.
Um, but then come day 4 or 5, you're up driving and you're going for your big walks, and that's what I did, and so on. Your body is remarkable, it can, in a lot of cases, and some it can't, but in most cases, sustain an awful lot of that and recover. So yeah, so that was the chemo. I had 4 AC treatments and then 4 Taxol treatments, and halfway through after the fourth AC treatment, I got very sick. I went to have my line changed. So they clean it and they take out part of it and give it a clean, and then you're ready for the following week. And I went to that, and I remember driving home to my mum and dad's halfway point for a cup of tea. And I went in and I started feeling really cold. And I went and I sat down. I was like, Dad, I don't feel great. And then I started to shake. And he was like, okay, I'll close the door. And he closed the sliding doors. And then I just started to shake and shake and shake and shake and shake. And I was having like sort of that rigor, where your whole body just starts, went to the bathroom thinking that I'd feel better. And then I was like, Mum, I'm going to have to, I think I have an infection. I think the line, it's caused an infection. So I rang the hospital, and I was very lucky I managed to avoid A&E, and I went
Mm.
straight into Vincent's private and they managed to get a bed for me. But at that point, I had to go up in a wheelchair. I was shaking all over. I couldn't stand properly. And my dad brought me in, and like he zoomed off, walking up to the floor where the oncology floor is, and I had to sit down because I just couldn't walk. So I lost him, and I was brought up to the oncology suite, and I remember my husband just standing there looking at me, wondering what the hell's going on, and they were running around me, putting in, taking blood tests and doing all sorts of things, and I was just lying there shaking. Anyway, I had neutropenic sepsis and COVID to boot. I remember my oncologist, Professor Walt, coming in and saying, Karen, managed to get through most of COVID. Not one of my patients had COVID, and it's 2022. and you've got COVID. I was like,
Oh.
well, thanks, thanks. And I was
Mm.
in there for 7 days. Didn't see a soul. Uh, couldn't open a window. Food left out on the doorstep, waiting for my bloods to come back up so I could start chemo and again. So yeah, that was. And I remember following that, I had the most horrendous ulcers and cold sores all over my nose and my mouth. I couldn't eat for a week. Um, Soup was the only thing that I could eat, so I lost loads of weight. But look at me now. Healthy, I lifting weights, I'm doing all sorts of things. Your body recovers, and that was amazing. But a
When you
very
look
low.
back, Karen, just telling your story, when you look back and even just sharing it again, I know you've shared it with other people, but how do you feel even about Karen that was, and I even go back to, the year before you were diagnosed and there was a lot of stress and a new baby and everything. So you were already kind of exhausted and broken. And then to get a diagnosis, and then not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, you're even more broken. And you found the will to survive and move through that, even though you were petrified and scared and exhausted and physically sick and all of those things, getting sepsis and COVID. When you hear yourself talking about all of that now, what do you think to yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at the time and realizing how long I have spoken for. There was a lot that went on.
Mm,
And for me, I just sort of almost, I didn't take photographs of myself getting treatment. I didn't do any of these sort of Instagram things because, well, now I do, but then I didn't. I
mm,
just wanted to pretend, Sharon, as though it wasn't happening.
yeah.
So I was in complete and utter survival mode. So that's what I look back on now. I look back and I see a woman who was struggling to stay alive and
Mm,
just focus on herself and try, and push through it. And if it weren't for family and friends, I don't think I'd be here. They were just my lifeline. I look back and I think how much I went through, and I had friends that never left my side, and family never left my side. Neighbors that became my closest friends, leaving food on my doorstep, taking my kids to school, and just so many things. Checking in on me, making me go out for walks. My family, every single one. I have three brothers and a sister, and my mum and dad. Every single one of them individually contacted me every single day when I was in hospital that week. Every single day, rang me, didn't send me messages, rang me. I mean, that must have been so hard for them. Not much to talk to somebody when they're in hospital. Like it was just. So I really. I just I felt so loved, that I just kept saying to myself, you'll get through this, and just carry on, and take each day. You take each day as it comes. I think at the start of my diagnosis, I did feel, sort of very lost and very, obviously very confused and upset and all of those emotions that come with a diagnosis. And then, I wallowed in that for a while. And then I remember talking to a very close friend of mine. And when I got off the phone to her, I just thought to myself, I'm just not going to be the victim anymore. I'm
mm,
actually going to do what I can do to focus on myself. And that is keep going with my exercising, eat as best I can, and change the thoughts that I have. And I wrote down thoughts, positive thoughts. You will get through this, like sort of just positive mantras.
mm,
I put them down on my phone. So every time I would just look, if I had a dark thought, I would look at them on my phone. Um, and I wrote them down on a sticky note in my kitchen, so that they were there in my face, reminding me, you are strong, you can do this, you are loved, loads of different statements. And when a dark thought came and tried to take over me, I would just say those on repeat,
mm.
over and over and over again. And I could be just reading it for 5 minutes, but just eventually it would sink in, and I would move on to the next task. So I found breaking things down into very small, sizable chunks in my day. I looked at every day, just that day. What am I going to do today? What is the one thing that I can achieve? And maybe that's just going for a shower. Maybe
Mm,
that is literally all I can do. Some days I couldn't even do that. I just stayed in bed and went to the toilet and drank my water and took my medicine and went back to bed for the
mm,
entire day. And then I'd wake up the next day and I'd be able to get up and shower.
mm,
So there were times where I just, did what I could do. And I just did things in small, sizable chunks and
mm.
focused on small, sizable things because it's so easy to run away with yourself and think so far in the future and set yourself into an absolute headspin.
Mm.
Um,
And listening to your body as well, especially during treatment, because as you said, your body is amazing and your body will show you signals, when it needs to rest. It's going to kind of say to you, okay, you have to stop pushing it. And it's for us to listen to that. And especially during treatment, I would say to people, let the body rest. It's trying to do its job, but it needs to rest and to be hydrated and nourished as best you can. Showering for a day is not going to really matter. But one of the things that stood out is the love and support that kept you going. Otherwise, you may not have recovered as well as you've recovered because people think that's not really important, but you can't do it on your own. Like I think we can't do most things in our lives. We need support. We need advocates for us. We need people to the ones that'll be nice and soft with us, but we need the other ones that'll say, get out that door now, Karen. You're going for that walk today. And someone that can talk real to you. And they're doing it because they love and care about you and they want the best for you. So having that support is huge, Karen, isn't it?
yeah, it really is. People, my
Mm.
mum and my sister coming in and cleaning my house and, stuff like
Yeah.
that, providing food for my children. I didn't have to cook or I just, yeah, look, Sharon, really, really important. Rest, I would see my bloods come up, if I had
Mm.
rested, my neutrophils and my white cells would be up.
Mm.
And I remember the oncologist saying to me when I went in that for that week, she said, "You must have been exhausted, Karen. Like your neutrophils were like right down. They were zero." Um, and I was like, again, dude, I am a mom. I am doing treatment and my kids are on their summer holidays and I'm having to drop them to camps and so on and so forth. And I also didn't want to just sit around doing nothing. But so yeah, look, rest is massively important. And so is getting out and exercising. So you have to do both. You rest, get out for your walk, and then rest again. And that really helped. Some people are strong enough to do weight training and things like that, which is really important during chemo to do your treatment, to do weight training because you can lose, the worst case scenario, you can lose like 70% of your muscle during chemo. So I lost an awful lot of muscle during chemo and muscle and exercise, weight training is really, really important for building that muscle.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, so that was my way of getting through was the small treatment, small snippets of sort of getting through each day.
Yeah. So you coming through all of that treatment, and then when was the date, or when was it, or have you been given like the all clear, as they say?
Yeah, well, I mean, thankfully when I had the mastectomy, all the cancer was gone. So the treatment was adjuvant treatment, so it was just sort of um, prevention for of the chemo to come back for coming back. So after that, then it was medication for a certain period of time. I'm still on it 3 years later. I had my radiotherapy, sorry, I had 25 sessions of radiotherapy. And then I had my treatment, my tablets. So I'm on an anastrozole, an aromatase inhibitor. I went on Zoladex, which suppresses your ovarian function, your ovary function. And then off I went. So, safety net completely taken away, and you're left trying to go back and live your life. And I think at that point, I was thinking to myself, gee, Chris, I really, this is terrible. I certainly don't feel like I can go and live my life.
Mm.
normally. Um, it you just it's like 3 minutes since you last thought about it, you know?
Mm. So it really changed your life
Yeah, it
in
definitely
so many ways.
changed the way. Oh yeah, you look at life through a different lens. You've got different lenses, definitely. They must swap
Mm.
those out during the operation. You see things differently. You definitely appreciate. I mean, you all the things that you hear from everybody. Um, people say don't sweat the small stuff, and I still sweat some small things. Like I still get annoyed if, whatever the house isn't tidy and so on. But definitely expectations change, and I catch myself more,
Mm.
definitely than I previously would have. I focus significantly more on myself now.
Mm.
And I prioritize myself after many years of not prioritizing myself. I prioritize myself because I know if I don't, I'm not here for my children and I need to
Mm.
prioritize myself first before anybody else. So I was always sort of, yeah, I prioritize myself after my kids. So I
Mm.
need to remember just to always think what's right for me, not in a selfish way because it's not selfish. Um, and yeah, look, I changed the way I eat. I changed the way I exercise. I had my ovaries removed. I had like my recovery after that was there was lots of little hiccups along the way after for the year after my treatment finished. I had to have my appendix removed, chest infection, like loads of little things just from not eating properly. And then about 5 months after I finished treatment, I thought, right, okay, stop trying to exercise and take over the world and just start eating properly. So I went back and did a nutrition course and got my eating in shape and then started weight training and changed the way I operate in that respect. So I do my weight training 4 times a week. I eat very well. Make sure I have a balanced diet. I used to eat lots of carbohydrates, pastas as a vegetarian before I was sick. So now I eat very differently.
Mm.
And I'm stronger now than I was ever before. So I take back from cancer on some positives from it
Mm.
is that I certainly wouldn't feel the way I feel now before cancer. So I am very, in a way, accepting for cancer to do that, that
Mm.
I definitely feel different and I'm more focused on myself. And I'm much, much happier because of that.
That's
Um,
brilliant.
yeah, less resentment because I'm focusing on myself and so
Yeah.
on. Yeah. You
And
learn
I
to let
think,
go of things, Sharon. Like you learn to
yes.
let go of things and you learn to say, right, what am I hanging on to that I actually don't need in my life? And the power of letting go. I remember as a coach doing that activity for myself before
Mm.
doing it for my clients, and it was so powerful. Just learning and well, just identifying what it is, what I need to let go of, and then once you do, it's like it's so empowering.
Yeah. Because again, I suppose, we shouldn't wait till we have a cancer diagnosis, but you'd hear a lot of people, and they have the weight of the world on their shoulder and the stress that it's causing in their lives and the worry and the fear about what's going to happen in the future. And I'll say, well, like you just said there, it's if you can manage today and if you can focus on today and getting through today, tomorrow will look after itself because worrying about tomorrow and the next day is not going to help you today. So, coming through your cancer diagnosis, all of that treatment, it is a trauma on the body. Don't mind the senses. It is a trauma on the body. Your body needs to heal. And with it, you need to give yourself time to realign where you are in your life. And you've certainly done that now because you're a shining example after everything that you've gone through. And I know people are listening to this podcast and going, oh my God, I could never go through all of that. That's horrendous. But it is amazing what we can endure. And just as you said, sometimes we are in survival mode, and we have that instinct within all of us that when we go through the worst scenarios, because think back to even before that, Karen, and what you survived, and thinking that was the worst thing in your life.
Oh,
And yeah,
absolutely.
and then you come through
You
this and
ain't
go,
seen nothing yet.
yeah, there you go. I do say that to everyone. We think what we've gone through already is the worst thing. I said, we've no idea. Of course, we don't wish for worse things to come, but we are living a human experience, and it's about ourselves and the people we love. These things are naturally going to touch us in some shape or form. So it's to,
Yeah.
again, focus on where you are today and the best you can do for yourself today. But
But
we,
but
sorry,
you
go
know
on,
what?
Karen.
Sorry, Sharon. No, I was just thinking back, when you talk about having to try and get through, such a traumatic thing like that, and your mind and where it goes and everything. I mean, I remember, my friends sending me messages, on WhatsApp or whatever every day, saying really positive things and that. And I remember my mom and my sister especially, they would send me daily messages. And my sister would send me daily, uh, a lot of the time, daily, like quotes about, just enduring and being resilient and things like that. And she used to take a photograph of, the book, The Fox, the Mole, the Horse, and the
Yes.
Boy, or I don't know
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. She used to take photos of that, of some of the pages, and she'd just send them to me like that. Ones, and they always just seemed to fit exactly what I was thinking at that time. And it would just make me cry. But in knowing that I was so loved, or I am so loved,
Mm.
by so many people, and it really does get you through.
Oh, absolutely. And even if you don't have that big family network, it's to find a support,
Oh yes.
you know, that there are supports out there, that you don't have to do this alone, because it's something that we try to be self-sufficient and independent most of our lives. And that's a great attribute to have, but not when you're going through a diagnosis or you're facing through some traumatic event, that you do get support while you're doing it. And if you don't have the family and friends that you were blessed to have, then I would say to my listeners, go out and find the supports that are
Oh yeah.
going to help and support you, because it is vital
Yeah.
to your well-being, your recovery, and again, your future, of knowing that, that you helped yourself in a way to find that support. You don't have to do anything on your own, thankfully, nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, I used Purple House after I went through my mastectomy. I used Purple House and Bray, and they were amazing. They are an amazing charity, as all these cancer support charities are. Purple House are based in Bray. They have a gym, they have reflexologists, they have acupuncturists, they have obviously therapists, they have a place for young children as well. They have so much, and communities, breast cancer community, Survive and Thrive. They do lots of different workshops and groups. And for women, for people that don't have family, for example, you really connect with somebody. So like if you go when you go through cancer, talking to somebody who has been through cancer, you connect so much better through that lived and shared
Mm.
experience. And it's just an automatic connection that you have. So having that connection, that group that you were saying, for people that don't have supports, it's incredibly powerful. And I've done support groups myself with other cancer support centers and workshops with them. And the power of getting cancer survivors in a room together is incredibly supportive and empowering for cancer survivors. More so, like a lot of people wouldn't feel comfortable, but making that leap, walking up the steps is the hardest part. Once you go in the door to these centers, they're just amazing.
Yeah. And that's what it's about. It's empowering yourself after this life-changing journey or chapter, whatever you want to call it in your life. And I think that's one of the reasons, as I said to you, Karen, is these conversations are so important to me. And with guests like you, to share real, not fluffy story about survival, but the real down and dirty and what I went through. And this is it. And this is what it was like. And, I'm still having to face struggles in my life, but I'm taking it day by day and I'm doing the best I can. And as you're doing that, you're gaining that lived experience and knowledge and wisdom so that you can share it now with your clients and
Yeah.
also in your podcast as well, which to me is, just
I
my
love
hat.
it. No, I
Yeah.
love it. I love
Yeah.
working with women that have been through cancer, whether it's breast or stomach cancer, whatever it is. I work with all women and also women that are going through menopause and struggling with their nutrition and everything. And I love nothing more than helping people and being
Yeah.
there and sharing that lived experience. Because so many of them say I've talking to nutritionist or dietitian, but it's not the same. It's not the same, Karen. Talking to you, when you've gone
Mm.
through it, it is very different.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love it. I just, in a way, it energizes me to see the help that I can give. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what that energizing is? It's that passion you have now, to, as I said again, to help and support and empower other people because you're empowering yourself also to say that that journey that I went through, that I struggled through, wasn't just to say, oh, it's done now, forget about it, because it's a huge part of your life. It's a huge part of your life. So when people say, oh, I'm done now, I'm in recovery, I don't have to think about it again, it's not like you can just close the book on it because it's still a huge part of you. You're still processing things from that, your body is still healing from it. And I think acknowledging that yourself and doing that with other people that you're supporting, they get you and you get them. And I think that's a powerful place to be in your
Mm.
life. And again, as I say, helping and supporting other women in your coaching and your workshops and in your podcast I'm just think it's amazing. And I'm
Thank you.
delighted for you, delighted to see where you are in your life and
Yeah.
delighted that you are through that struggle, focusing on what's keeping you passionate about living and working, and that it will grow from strength to strength, like you're doing, Karen. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you very much, Sharon. It's been so lovely to talk to you. And yeah, I've not actually gone into so much detail before on a podcast. So I hope it was enough for everybody or not too much. And thank you very much, and for all the help you're sharing for the people as well. It's amazing.
Thank you, Karen. So that was Karen Kruger, everybody, an amazing guest, and you can check her out on KarenKrugerCoaching.com, and you can find her on Instagram, Karen underscore menopause underscore and underscore cancer. I'll be putting all of these links in the show notes. But you can also check her out on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. So there is somewhere for everybody. But first, I would say go and check out her website and then pop over and follow her on all her Instagram, show her your support, and check out her podcast as well. It's on Spotify and I'm sure on Apple and all the rest. Survivor's Guide to Menopause and Cancer. And it's Ireland's first dedicated podcast for women that have had a cancer diagnosis or in the menopause. And I can tell you, I am sure there is many people listening that go, I'm on that podcast straight away.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
Not at all. Delighted to have you. Thank you so much, Karen. And I wish you every happiness and health for the future.
Thank you so much.
So thank you to all of you again for listening. And if you or someone you think that they would benefit from hearing Karen's story, even if you find it a little bit hard to listen to all the detail, sometimes people like to know what's ahead of them, instead of going in blindly, and that it can be hard. But as Karen has said, your body is amazing and it wants to heal. So having that support around you is vitally important. So do share with your friends or family or whoever you think may benefit from listening. So I thank you all again, and until next time, take care of you.